Hi, hello, and welcome to Learn Stroke IS classes by Arjun. And you're listening to the editorial analysis, the summary for 2024 UPSC exams current affairs. This is the class 16, and you're with me, Arjun R. Shankar. So let's quickly move on to the important things. And all the people who have not subscribed the channel, please do subscribe to us. Listen to the important sessions that we take, and please do subscribe to this channel also. And moving on, what are the important editorials that we have to discuss? Let's have an understanding. First of all, we have to discuss about the Israel Palestine and the international support relating to that. A lot of articles are very important from GS paper 2, international relations, and next article is regarding the India and climate justice. So again from GS paper 3, environment, conservation, biodiversity, it's very important to know what are the challenges of climate justice and what is India doing in this regard. And moving on to the next important one is regarding the food security challenges in India. So what is the food security challenges in India? What are the things that we should keep remember in your mind regarding these areas? And the next one is regarding the distribution of taxes to southern states. And most importantly, that means the distribution of taxes to the states. Having a federal idea on this, again, this is also important from GS paper 2, taxation, GS paper 2, polity governance, because the federal structure, and also has an impact on GS paper 3, economy. It also has an impact on GS paper 3, economy. And India's food security challenge, again from GS paper 3, economy perspective, what are the challenges that we have. And even GS paper 2, you can say it is important from the perspective of GS paper 2, health aspects. So I think these are the important editorials that we have to discuss. And let's quickly move on to the first important editorial. Here we go. Israel must stop bombing and find a solution to the Palestinian question. So again, GS paper 2, international relationship. We get a lot of articles, and what are the important things, and what is Israel going to do? All the eyes are on Israel. One question: will Israel stop the war? Will Israel stop the war with Palestine, or what about the Israeli settlements? It talks about the Israeli settlements in Palestine, in Gaza, etc. Will Israel pull it back? Will Israel stop bombing? Will actually Israel recognize the status of Palestine? And will there be peace? And in this context, how are the countries going to help in this? How are the countries going to help in this is the next important thing that we have to understand. So let's quickly apply the IS filter and go on with the important and the clear important points. And the recent conflict and disproportionate response. So it talks about a disproportionate response. The attack on Hamas, the attack by Hamas on Israel was anything. It was definitely brutal. A lot of damage was created, resulting in casualties. So Israel's response, particularly its airstrikes in Gaza, is often seen as disproportionate and causing significant Palestinian casualty. So I don't know in which context you will take this, but imagine that there are two sides. Imagine two sides of this, and this side called Y and this side called X. So Y has created a damage. Say it has created a damage of 100 units, say 100. And what happens is X gets really infuriated or threatened. X retaliates Y and created a damage of 1,000. So what happens is it is not in proportion. So definitely on this side, this is Israel. Definitely Israel is one of the most powerful countries, so it has got that power to destroy it. So what the editorial says that the attack by Israel is disproportionate and it's even created more damage. What is your opinion on that? And what is the international response and support for Israel? And you should know that at one point of time you can see Israel, and on this side you have Palestine on every day. There are countries which are supporting Israel. So there are a lot of countries, including you can say USA, UK, or even France, Canada, Poland, and even Norway have all come in. And most often the supporters are Arab countries here. And this the most important country being India. India is definitely supporting Israel. So most of the countries are not supporting Israel. You know why? Because even the Arab countries, it's an attack on the Arabs. So definitely they want to retaliate. Libya recently, in 2 3 days, Libya has in the parliament unapologetically supported Israel, Palestine cause. But majority of them do not support go against Israel, because Israel is a big economic giant for many of the Arab countries. They depend on Israel on many things, so they just don't want to uh, ruin the international relations, and that is the reason why they are not responding. So this is also important. And luckily, Israel has done a good thing. It has allowed some humanitarian aid from Gaza to come from Egypt. And also important, you should know where is the map of Gaza. It's important that you know, so you'll know that it's near Egypt, and it is definitely helping it. And Egypt is also helping Israel to check whether Palestine is not getting military support and weapons smuggling from Egypt. So the article says whatever help it is coming from Egypt, it is very insufficient. It is not sufficient at all. And moving on to the next important one, as regarding the criticism of Israel's response. So Israel's bombing of Gaza is criticized as counterproductive, and a lot of civilian casualties is being created. So it is not solving the Palestinian issue at all. They're simply fighting, so it's counterproductive. And the Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, said it is going to crush Hamas, but it is not as easy as they believe, and there is going to be a lot of cost and burdens for this. So again, uh, Israel's dilemma, whether they have to crush Hamas, or there is going to be an urban war if Gaza was to be occupied, and whether they want to crush Hamas or to create solve the problems. So Israel is actually in a dilemma whether to fight continuously or solve the problems. Unresolved Palestinian issue. That is the thing that I was telling you. The Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories remains unaddressed. So you can see that there are some territories which are called Palestinian territories, and you can see Israeli settlements in all these Palestinian territories. So this has even created big problem for the Palestinian people. So again, the problem is unresolved. They are yet to find a decision on that. And Israel, there is lack of international pressure. The imagine that United States of America is applying pressure on Israel to stop the bombing is not likely to happen, because every country is in support of Israel. There is nobody internationally to tell them that please do not bomb, or do not bomb, or do not create an attack on these places. So again, that is also a big time challenge in this. So there is no lack of international pressure is also something that we have to note here. So it is the attack on Gaza is to continue, causing more suffering for millions of Palestinians and loss of life for both the parties. So this is in turn the summary of the editorial. And moving on to the next is GS paper 3. What is the concept of climate justice in a warming India? What is going to be the future? If there is going to be a climate justice, how are we going to solve this? Is the next important. Let's apply the IS filter, and let's take the most important points. The G20 summits agreements. So the recent G20 summit in Delhi agreed to triple, the word is triple, 3 times renewable energy capacity, and double, this is again 2 times energy efficiency improvement by 2030. That is the important target of G20. So it's a good thing, right? So G20, one is triple renewable energy capacity. Whatever your renewable capacity is, the year is 2030. So remember 2030, by 2030, one, double, triple the renewable energy capacity, and double the energy efficiency that we are creating. So all these are important commitments, but lack of consensus in phasing out fossil fuels. But whatever has been done, the summit did not reach a consensus in the sense phasing out fossil fuels. It did not talk much about, see, we can increase the renewable energy, we can increase the efficiency, but that doesn't mean that how can you stop or completely phase out fossil fuels. That is a big challenge, and that is the root cause of climate crisis, is the fossil fuel. How can you phase out, that is a word, phase out, completely renew this, or go do away with this. And the concept of climate mitigation, It emphasizes two key principles for climate mitigation. One is very important, two principles. One is internalizing the cost by making emitters pay for social and environmental impact. So, whoever is emitting, say this is an emitter, they are emitting the fumes, they are creating this pollution, they are creating the emitter. But what happens is, this is an emitter called X, this is the emission of X, and there is another emitter called Y. All these can be countries also, and they are also emitting in these areas, the pollution is goes in these areas. But what happens is, when X has created this much of emission, Y has created this much of emission, you should make X pay for this. You should make X pay for the mess that they have created. You should make Y pay for the mess that they have created. So that is the number one. And the second is climate justice by compensating those harmed. So one is making them pay, and one is important, making them pay is one, and second is compensating. So all these are important things that we can remember in this context. And moving on to India's perspective and climate justice. So what is climate? See, India's climate justice. You can see that historically India has got lower emissions, and it's on foreign policy consideration. So, what is this foreign policy? Imagine that historically India has got the lower emission when you compare, but India stands on climate change. And what is the priority of India? India often prioritize economic growth over climate mitigation. As a developing country, India is very hungry to create development and growth so that the people get the benefits. So, definitely, given a choice between growth and climate change or climate mitigation, definitely India has always chosen growth and development because they wanted more developments to happen. However, this approach doesn't address the climate justice concerns within India. So that is again an important point. So this approach that we are creating is not addressing the climate justice in India. This won't help us. Just as you focus on economic growth, you should focus on climate change and the mitigation process also. And there is also one more thing that the editorial mentions, that in India, there is a rising inequality, whether it is based on the class, caste, or religion. Inequality also creates a big time problem. And even this inequality in the society also has an impact on climate change. So, that is a very good point. So, just imagine a new point regarding inequality and climate change. This is a very good relationship that the editorial talks about. What is the relationship between inequality and climate change? Inequality and climate change. So the article say that there is a correlation. Yes, inequality and climate impact. So you can see climate change and energy transition disproportionately affect the poor. So the climate change and energy transition, it's affecting the poor, particularly in agriculture and fishing industry. And one important point, inequality in society can lead to higher carbon emissions per unit of economic activity. Very, very important. If there is inequality, climate change or climate higher carbon emission will be possible. All these things are basically studies done by people. So, what is the implication of India's energy transition? You can see India's energy transition goal from shifting from what? Coal is also very important to be noted here, and that is something that we have to be very clear. So, you kindly excuse me for that, and I need to plug my charger here. So, one sec. Yes. Sorry for that, and I forgot to plug in the charger here. So, okay. So quickly coming back. So transition from coal, this is the transition that everybody is talking about. From coal, it needs to go to renewable energy. So do you think this transition is going to be very easy in India? It's not easy. And when you transition from coal to natural renewable resources, renewable energy, you see that it impacts the livelihood and regional disparities. So you know that a lot of people are dependent on the coal, refining, coal extraction, all these aspects. So when you quickly move to renewable sources, it can even impact the livelihood and regional disparity and create more inequality. So that is the reason why climate change has got an inequality aspect. We have to go do away with coal, but when you do away with coal, imagine the hundreds and thousands of people, lakhs of people who depend on coal and the related stuff, they will lose the livelihood and region. It will again cost region inequality. So that is the inequality that I'm trying to explain here. So at the same time, we need the green investments. Green investments mean more clean energy. At the same time, create or do away with inequality. Just in the name of green investment, creating green energy doesn't mean that we should create inequality in the economy or in the society. So this is very much linked, and I guess you know this. You got this idea very clearly. And let's create an understanding more regional inequality and energy sources. You will see India's energy source divides has created regional disparities with let's imagine the distribution of resources. It's called let's clearly understand the distribution of resources, and you will see another inequality that can be understood. Coal coal is concentrated in poorer regions. Just imagine the areas of Jharkhand, all these are much more they are not as developed as the other places. Also, it needs more development. Doesn't mean that they are poorer regions on terms of economic value compared to the other states, but you will see the renewable energy are in the wealthier regions, are more in terms, this is all in terms of money. Okay, so it means that coal is actually in the poorer regions and renewable energy is in the wealthier regions. uh, State governments play a significant role in India's federal. So this is again brought in union aspect of polity, union and state. That is the concept of federal, because union and state needs more power. And you can see in this, it plays a very significant role to address regional inequality and transfer of funds accordingly. So the relationship between union and states in tackling climate change is also very important. So union should definitely give out the share of the tax, the share of the tax to the states to even help mitigate the climate change issue. So the union state relationship also is very important, because union should support the states in terms of funding and states should take also a lead. So this model is also very important. So that is why we say we need a federal approach. I think you know the word federal. When I say states are separate entities, but they have their own independence and their own authority, also their own powers. It highlights the importance of a federal approach in India's climate and energy transition. Cooperation and policy alignment with union and state governments are crucial for inequality, for climate and inequality mitigation. So always remember, climate change should we work on that, and doesn't mean that we should create inequality. We should work really on that. So I think this is the most important points are really clear. And let's take some questions. What are the key agreements reached at G20 summit in Delhi regarding renewable energy and energy efficiency by 2030? What are the regional disparities and economic implications associated with India's transition from coal to renewable energy? And how can this be mitigated at the federal and state levels? So definitely you need state and union support for this. Okay, fair enough. And let's go quickly to the food system or the food security. So let's take in GS paper 3 economy, GS paper 2 it's also welfare, and even the government support. So GS paper 3 and 2, let's read it from that perspective, and let's quickly apply the IS filter and move on to the important points. And what are the challenges of food system in India? Let's quickly take it. India, definitely you know that India is the largest population, so definitely it has to feed, faces significant challenges in its food system. So we have more than 130 million people. So do you think it is very easy to do all this thing? Definitely. So you have to feed a lot of people. When you say you have 140 plus or 140 plus crores of people, so definitely you need a lot of people to feed. So what is going to be the food security in India? These challenges include malnutrition, low farm income, and environmental degradation. So malnutrition is definitely a problem. Children are not getting enough food, they are dying. And what about low farm income? The farmers needs to be more incentivized. Farm income, farmers should get more income, or else how are you going to plan the development? And environmental degradation, definitely. Climate change, environmental degradation is definitely going to affect the food system also. Food production is very important. It affects the food production. And what is the another interesting challenge that you can see? India is the same country where you can see challenges of malnutrition and obesity. On one side, people do not have food, people are malnourished, people die. And on the other side, people have so much of food that they eat much and they are obese people. So this paradox, this is definitely a paradox that can be seen here. It's a clean example of a paradox. And many small farmers struggle to make ends meet, often resorting to non-farming activities. So, if that is why we need to create farm incomes. If farmers are not getting any benefits from the farming, they will resort to non-farming activities. So again, that is again a challenge for food production. So that is again, and depleting natural resources like soil health, declining groundwater are all environmental challenges for food production, food security in India. And again, changing climate. So please remember, when you get a food challenges of food security, definitely you have to write all these points, farm incomes. So if you write all these points, whenever you write in the mains answer paper, these points, if you write, definitely you will write better than many of the aspirants. You're quoting the right points, so please remember these points also. And quickly moving, we need a three pronged approach for this. So what is a three pronged approach? One is a three sided approach. What is that? It should involve consumers or producers, that means farmers, and middlemen, which is value chain actors. So always remember, there is a consumers, there is a consumer, and there is a producer, and between the consumers and the producer there is a supply chain. There are people who take this and interlink all these aspects. Don't think that is all happening on its own. So producers and the important interlinking people, or the middlemen, we should take all the people. So right from producers, farmers, to middlemen, the supply chain, value chain, and the consumers, we need to have a three strategy approach. You can even draw this picture in the answer paper also. And uh, and it also talks about your important diet. Your diet is also very important. And what about when you talk about obesity, and it asks the private sector, social media influencers, and public sector initiatives to spread the value of diet. Having a good diet is really good. You have to promote this idea. And what about resilient farm income? Farmers definitely need that farm income, or else what is the point? And how can you ensure that? How can you make sure that you get a sustainable and resilient farm income? So that means you need to do a lot of new agriculture practice. Agriculture needs to be revamped. Agri needs to be revamped, because without revamping it, how can you create farm incomes better? So initiatives like National Mission on Natural Farming. So also understand, what is this natural farming mission? All this can be even asked for the prelims exam. Needs to scale up. We need to do create more missions. Agriculture support should be given. And transition from input subsidies to direct cash support. We need to give more support to these also. Apart from subsidies, we need to give cash support. So all these things will definitely help the farmers to get more income also. And sustainable value chains, the food value chains to be more sustainable. And corporations and middlemen should directly, so as I said, the middle people, the corporations and middlemen should procure directly from farmers, create the better incentivized sustainable practice and fair trade measures, and have a strong link between FPO. What is an FPO? Farmer Producer Organization. So as I said, the consumer and the producer, at this there is a supply, there is a value chain, middlemen. You should see that this middlemen, to get it to the consumer, they should directly procure from the farmers. And having another middleman will not give them income. Everybody will have a share, and finally the farmer or the producer will not get that income. So the middleman, the corporation, should directly get it from the farmers. And in this concept, also remember the important aspect of FPO, or the farmers producing organizations. So it's an ambitious transformation, definitely. So India should set an example to the world, how to build a sustainable and equitable food system to treat the largest population in this world. So I think It's a very good article regarding food security. And what are the questions? What are the dual challenges related to the nutrition that India faces? Definitely obesity and malnutrition. What are the implications of these challenges on its population? Please try to find what approaches are recommended to tackle the interconnected challenge of India's food system. How can each aspect be addressed effectively? I think you can write this answer very well now. Okay, so quickly moving on to the next important articles is regarding, are southern states being punished for their success? So it's a very critical article, and do not believe that the editorial, these are articles written by people, so uh, they can actually reflect their own internal opinions. You should not take that opinion right away. That is the reason why your civil service aspirant, you should think, if you should think. But our idea is to take the important points and use it for UPSC. We may not agree to all the articles, but this article clearly say that you should know, get an idea. I think this is the basic of fiscal federalism. You must have heard about a concept. You will later, if you've studied, you will definitely heard concept of fiscal federalism. You see that you have this center. Let's draw it quickly and let me understand this narrative quickly. There is a center and there are states at this. So definitely there is a relationship between center and states, and that is the important characteristics of federalism. The states have independent. I mean, they have their own powers, but definitely they have a instruction from the center, but they are their own authority. So state, we have a federalism. The federal character is there, and the fiscal means you have added economics to that, and you know that in India, even center. Let's bring in the concept of taxation system. You very well know that in India, center can tax a lot of things. Even states have the power to tax a lot of things. But one understanding that you need to get is the taxation that state is getting. State is also taxing. So do you think that the proceeds of the taxation will give money to the states to sustain? Is that money sufficient for the states to develop or create development in the state? Absolutely no. That development or that money is not proper or sufficient for the states. That is the reason why center often distributes the share of taxes to the states. And that is the reason why bring in the idea of Article 280 of the Indian Constitution. It is the Finance Commission. So you know that Finance Commission is set up, and you must have noticed about the 15th Finance Commission. And what are their observations? That center can distribute the tax, the share is actually being distributed. The share is actually distributed to the states, and that is how states do a lot of national development programs, developmental issues, developmental programs are conducted. And in this thing, you should understand that the interview or the editorial say that southern Indian states are not given the fair share of shares. That means when the northern Indian states are getting more share, southern Indian states are not getting the right share. So this is the crux of the article. I think I've already given the idea. So let's quick check the important points and apply the IS filter. I hope you got this idea. And now let's quickly move on. And southern states concern. So they have raised concerns. Number one, they have raised concern about what? Distribution of central taxes. I hope now you know it very well. And the political disenfranchisement when delimitation of constituency resumes in 2026. So it also talks about, one is taxation. So let me clearly explain this. So one, it talks about taxation, and it also talks about delimitation. What is the concept of delimitation? Let me make it very clear. Because in Lok Sabha election, takes the example of Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha election, you see that population is a key factor. See, imagine there is a state called X, it has got 1,000 population, and imagine there is a state called Y, it has got only 100 population. So what happens is, the seats in Lok Sabha, that X might get a lot of seats. X might get a seat which is actually proportional on the basis of the population that they have. So obviously X will have more seats and Y will have lesser seats. This happens with Lok Sabha. But what happens with Rajya Sabha is, Rajya Sabha seats are not entirely based on the population system. That is reason why maybe union territories or small states may not have that kind of a population. So it wants to create a better equality also. So Rajya Sabha seats are, doesn't, I'm not saying it's not, it's are may not be completely dominated by population. So one demand that the article put forwards is South Indian states should get a more distribution of central taxes, and it talks about the election and the delimitation. Delimitation means you actually carve the number of seats on the base of the population. So these are the two challenges that the article talks about. Southern states feel that they are not getting their fair share of central taxes and their contributions are not adequately recognized. So this is a complaint from the southern states. And again, distribution of funds. How is the distribution of funds even for financial commission is based on the criteria of population and income distance, which disadvantages the southern states. Just because the population is low, imagine that the population is low, but the problems are high. What is going to be the solution? You need to give them 100 rupees. So according to the theory, population, they might only receive 100 rupees, but the problems in the states are so high that they should be ideally getting 1000 rupees. So just because on the criteria of population, this may not be true. The state's problem can be even larger than that. So that is the idea that we have to get. So declining, so let's get an example also. The share has been declining, the keyword declining over time. For instance, Kerala's share was 3.8% in the 10th Finance Commission, but now you can see 15th, it has declined to 1.9%. So with 1.9%, can Kerala survive and do a lot of things? Key understanding. So this is how you should clearly understand this topic. So the shift in population base here for determining political representation has raised concern, and some southern states feel that they will lose representation in parliament due to population criteria. So they do not want by 2026 we'll have the new things coming up, delimitation, new things coming up. They do not want that. They feel that if you go by the criteria of population, if you go by the population concern, southern Indian people will lose representation in parliament because of the population. So population should not be the only criteria, is what they say, and freeze Rajya Sabha seats at their current levels. So whatever is the seating capacity or the seats that have been given to the states, you freeze that. Please do not bring in the population thing just like you do in Lok Sabha into Rajya Sabha also. So they say that in order to create effective representation, it's good that you consider the 1971 population as a basis for representation to maintain what fairness and prevent marginalization of successful states. So they say that this is very important. So in the article say that the South Indian states are more successful than the North Indian states. So it's all it can be only ascertained after seeing the data. And it ultimately, this is summing up, it talks about unequal distribution of central taxes and potential marginalization due to population based representation. So the article says South Indian states are highly developed, but in spite of so much of development in South India, they are not getting proper representation in parliament only because it is population based. So I think it's a very good article. So if you got I think I've explained the points in detail. Please remember the points, and let's check out two important questions. Why are South Indian states expressing concerns about the distribution of central taxes and potential political disenfranchisement? What factors contribute to the declining share of resource allocated to southern states, and how has this impacted their development? So please write your views. And yes, and we have almost come to the end of the class, and please do subscribe to our channel, LearnStroke IAS classes by Arjun, and share it with your friends. Let's see for another editorial. So keep preparing well. Thank you so much.